Welcome to Popcorn Talk, featuring movie discussion, news, and interviews. Popcorn Talk. We talk movies. And now, here's Popcorn Talk's Guilty Movie Pleasures.
All right, Guilty Movie Pleasure fans, we have a very special episode for you today. Straight from quarantine, all four of us are joining you. But I got to introduce some people here. We got Ryan Nielsen, our producer, in the booth there. We got me, Ben Begley, your host, Jesse McIntosh, my co-host, and this just happened like an hour and a half ago. The director of the movie we're covering today, The Hunt, Craig Zobel's here. Woo! Thank you for joining us.
Yeah.
Happy to be here.
This is the magic of the internet sometimes. Most of the time, Twitter can be a vile, awful place. But then there are moments like this that make me go, maybe it's not so bad.
I fully agree. Completely agree.
And I'm sure, Craig, God, I have so many questions. I don't even know where to begin. But first off, I want to tell you that Jesse, myself, and Ryan all watched The Hunt this weekend. I've been excited to see it since the trailers dropped back in, I think, August. Was that when they first dropped?
Yeah.
And I remember being so pissed when it got delayed, especially because it got delayed because our president, I don't even use that, I can't, anyways, that guy tweeted out and got angry about something he didn't read about or didn't know anything about, which luckily has never happened since.
Yeah.
But anyway, yeah. So, I mean, first question I have for you is that, we all loved it. It was awesome, and we'll get into that. But how has this journey been for you? I don't know how many movies get canceled from a tweet by the President of the United States. That's got to be some sort of a marker for you, like a bucket list thing.
Very genuinely, it's starting with canceled by a tweet from the president, put back on, and then canceled by a global pandemic. Pretty cool.
It's pretty strange timing, to say the least.
Right?
Yeah.
I mean, you had to have, when it was finally coming out on Friday the 13th, the perfect date for this to be.
On Monday the 9th, I was like, we're good, right? This is cool. We're going to be cool, right?
I feel so. You could have
never.
Yeah.
But Thursday the 12th, I was like, wait, what? What's happening?
Yeah.
We saw a screening the Tuesday prior of Bloodshot, and we were at that screening. We were like, we have to do The Hunt. Let's try and get there this weekend, and then just an avalanche of bad news.
Yeah. I had tickets for Friday because I was like, this is going to be amazing. I can't wait. And then Thursday hit, and I have a pregnant wife and a 3-year-old, and I was like, I really want to see The Hunt, but I really don't want to get coronavirus. So I was like, I literally was so torn. And then when they announced it, that they were releasing it online, I rented it Friday night, the day it came out online, and my wife and I watched it, and we had a blast.
And thank you. I don't, it's a strange day in the fact that I don't want to be yay, everybody finally got to see my movie. When at the same time, I do give a shit about movie theaters, and I do care. I worry about the precedent, and I don't want movie theaters to go away.
Yeah.
Yeah. But
I think that
for me, as the things that happened to this movie, I'm thank you, please, anyone
just
who
put it out there.
Somebody see it. Somebody see it.
Whatever, great.
Yeah.
Can I ask you, Craig, what were the discussions like in the interim? How often were you in touch with people trying to push the movie forward? What were those talks with the studio like?
To be specific, between relaunching the movie and the COVID issue.
I was asking more between when it was canceled and when you decided to relaunch.
Well, as you might expect, it was a lot of conversations that first week.
Sure.
Don't bet your phone didn't stop ringing.
Yeah, and then not so many and then gradually tapering. And I just was, I would say that all of us involved in making the movie look, the one thing I will say is that like everyone I was directly in contact with as the director of the movie, was desperate to try to make the movie come out. I think everybody kind of knew what the movie was and wanted it to come out, and I include everybody from like Damon Lindelof and Nick Hughes, the writers, to Jason Blum, producing it, to who knew what the movie was and was like really proud of the movie that we'd made and wanted that to be out there because like I think he thought it was cool. I think to like to the executives at Universal. I think there's a lot of people at Universal that were like, yeah, like we should be making movies like this. Yeah, this is the thing that we want to be behind, and this is the thing we want to support. And once it was clear that the movie was like not gonna have, once to be specific, once it was clear that there was like bad people kind of saying bad things about the release of the movie that we all felt like was not appropriate to sort of like in our own hearts like release the to if there were people saying that stuff, we all were kind of like, okay, I guess we need to take a time out and like figure out how to re-release the movie. After that, I mean, to answer your question, after that, I was always like, as soon as people see this, they'll see that it's like a midnight movie.
Yeah.
That was like the point, is that it was a midnight movie, and then we should all be like laughing and hopefully like enjoying ourselves. Like the point was to like make like a silly thing. And I've like made serious movies before. I swear, I know how to make serious movies like that.
Well, yeah, you've done a ton of stuff. So people who may not know yet, you worked on Westworld. You did 3 episodes of the Leftovers. Z for Zachariah. Compliance was a big festival darling. So this was, I think it's safe to say, kind of a change of pace for you tonally, right?
Yeah, I would say that. I mean, like it was fun to. I guess I had to be specific. Like I had like gotten to play with. When you're making a Westworld episode, like that stuff is like bonkers. Like what's going on in a like normal episode of Westworld is like what? Completely bonkers like all the time. But like it was like I was able to like I was like, yeah, I'm into this type of storytelling, right? Like we can do this. Like I'm excited to do this, and I was excited to make. I did the episode I did was like the for those people who have seen the second season, it was the Japanese.
Oh yeah.
Episode.
That one's incredible.
Just like bonkers and dumb. Yeah. Like it's like silly. Where she mind controls everybody, and they all just start hacking each other, and she's walking in slow motion with all the blood splattering. Oh, it's so good. Yeah. I was remember that.
I was going to say, your TV work is so great. I think one of my favorite episodes of TV in general is International Assassin, season 2 of The Leftovers. Just an all-time favorite episode of TV. Never seen anything like it. And I feel like you always leave that kind of imprint on a lot of the things you work on. And with this is no exception with The Hunt. I'm curious, since that delay happened, I assume there weren't any changes to the edit. But really. Did you guys modify anything or add anything in since then to now?
No, and I mean it was a big conversation at some point. Not necessarily in the sense that like people were like pressuring us to, but like in the sense of like should we be doing something? But genuinely partly because we could be able to look at all of you and say like, yeah, no, nothing was changed since it happened, because I do kind of think that like the thesis of the movie was talked about by all of the people in the making of the movie, or in the like in that release. Like I do think that there was like such a level of the things that we were trying to talk about were actually like being represented in the like coverage of the movie that I want to say for sure. Like, yeah, we genuinely didn't change anything. I was in the last 2 days of the sound mix of the movie, which happens after the like color correct and all of the editorial decisions have been made. I was like debating like whether or not the like blood and guts were like loud enough on screen and whether or not footsteps were loud. I remember I was like dealing with the footsteps in the Ma and Pa gas station scene.
Oh yeah.
I love that scene.
Yeah, like when Ike Barinholtz from that same scene like called me on my phone and was like, he was like, hey, I think that the president just tweeted about us. And I was like, what? I had to absorb all that information while I was like watching the finished cut of the movie. So we didn't change anything, which I feel like is valuable information, just in the sense that like, as I was watching the movie, I was like, oh, like I had to finish watching. Like, I had to still do my job, you know. Like I just don't finish watching the movie and doing this playback of the movie and like watching scenes like where it's like, you know, the scene where Hilary Swank, the sort of like scene where you kind of learn all the backstory of the movie 3/4 of the way through, where you see Hilary Swank be like, I don't understand, it was just a joke. And they're like, you shouldn't have used that word, deplorables.
Yeah. And then it happened in real life. What? What?
And just so anyone who hasn't seen the film knows, it's about 12 strangers who wake up in a clearing.
Yeah, I guess
one day. They have no idea how they got there, and they're being hunted. I think that's a good enough little log line right there.
Yeah. See,
should we move into a spoilery discussion, because we're already starting to talk about some plot points a little bit? Yeah. Let's go ahead and move into that.
Well, actually, before we do that, Craig, I wanted to ask you a question, because my wife, ever since she had our daughter, she's been very like, she used to love horror films, and now she can't take them as much. So when she first saw the trailer for this back in August, she was like, you can see that looks too intense for me. And then she hadn't seen the marketing campaign when it was re-released, where it leaned into the comedy more. And Friday, I was like, you're watching this with me. It's going to be funny, I promise. And within like the first 5 minutes, she was laughing her ass off and enjoyed the hell out of it. And so I guess and I had somebody tweet at me on saying like, oh, I'm not going to watch this, Hollywood hates us. And I responded being like, actually, it makes fun of both sides equally. And the deplorables, like Betty Gilpin is considered a deplorable, and she's the protagonist. I was like, you should give it a chance. And she's like, well, it's still not my cup of tea, but I appreciate you letting me know. And I'm like, hey, at least she doesn't think you hate her anymore. Like, baby steps.
Thanks, Ben.
I also think the important thing to take from that discussion is Ben is an authoritarian leader of his own household.
Yep.
And he forces people to do,
But my wife is you know, she also doesn't like super gory stuff anymore. And the one thing I'm trying to, before we get into spoilers, give people that may be worried it's too intense, or it's like The Purge, or it's like Saw. It's nothing like any like that, because the first trailer made people think it was like The Purge, only liberals hunting deplorables in a way, I think. And when even the gore, I think you smartly do the gore where there's moments of more extreme gore, but it's still all either really funny or tastefully cuts away at the right moment. And so like how much in the edit was that like discussed, where you're trying to figure out like what's too far?
And I was probably the like biggest prude of the entire scenario.
Because the grossest thing is in the first 5 minutes with the eyeball, I feel like.
Right. I felt like at the beginning, let's give them what they paid for in terms of...
And you give it. Just so the people at home know, Hilary Swank shoves a heel into the eyeball of the guy who has woken up on the private jet that they're flying all these people to. And then she pulls it out, and the eyeball and the retinal... what do you call it? The retinal nerve, which is gigantic, pulls out the whole thing and then plops it off and wipes her heel off.
I would also like to add
It's
that
incredible.
the sound volume on the heel to the eye was perfect.
Thank you.
Yeah.
We were doing that as the precedent was changing. Thank you.
But I thought but even that could have been like super disgusting, but because it went so
My
extreme,
whole thing was that it's like it should always
funny.
be funny. Like it should be the funny version of that. Like my feeling was, I mean, like I've weirdly I'm like I've watched a ton of horror movies in my life. I would not necessarily call myself like a gore horror. I wouldn't necessarily say that I am a fan of like horror the way that it's like a gore horror. Although I understand what it is, and like I kind of understood what we were making in my mind was there was a certain level where we like needed to satisfy the like target.
Yeah.
In sense, in my own brain, like what I would like if I was gonna see this. I thought of this as a midnight movie, like as a grindhouse midnight movie. You know, like I was like, what's the midnight movie version of like the story? And so like in my mind, I felt like we had to do a little bit of that. I mean, like partly because that's helps you understand how ridiculous the like story is, right?
Well,
like so I've been actually like kind of like trying to caveat and like tell people who are like gonna watch the movie over the internet, since there's this like amazing ability to like watch the movie over the internet all of a sudden that didn't exist a week ago, that like all of a sudden everybody is watching the movie this way. I'm like, hey, you know, it is gory. It's a horror movie. It is gory, but it is like absurd gory. Like,
oh yeah, it reminds me.
Yeah,
it's like it reminds me of like the gore in like Shaun of the Dead or Cabin in the Woods, something like that, where like a moment that I laughed so hard at among many was the woman who runs for it. And then she jumps in a hole, and as soon as she jumped in the hole, I was like, something bad's in there. So just for the viewers at home, to give you a little taste, they all the deplorables, they wake up and they have these gags in, and they find this wooden crate, and they pull out all these guns, and then they immediately start getting picked off. And that was so shocking. My wife and I gasped every time, because spoilers, you kill off Emma Roberts immediately in the funniest way possible, where we were both like, what the shit? We were like, wait. And then
the amount of energy and expense that we put into like killing off Emma Roberts as fast as possible was very challenging. So thank you for liking that.
And then Kevin Hartley, who my wife and I are huge fans of This Is Us, which we like to call This Is Us ugly crying every week.
Of course. Like my only experience with This Is Us, like I didn't even know the full plot of This Is Us, except for I had seen it as walking through, like while putting my shoes on while it was on the TV. And like every time I would be like, wait, what's happening? And I'd like start watching This Is Us, and like 4 minutes into it, I'd be like,
right? Every episode you're
Craig,
like,
okay. I cry from 10 to 11 on Tuesdays every night with the TV off, just by osmosis. because I know it's on.
Yeah, it happens. But
yeah, so I was just like, I said that to Kevin. I was like, man, I just like cry every time.
It's so, and I love the fact that the trailers were edited. I rewatched the trailer like 3 times to see how smartly you guys edited it. That like you make it look like Ike Barinholtz is in the scene with Betty Gilpin in the gas station. You make it look like this whole thing where they're getting picked off is like the 3rd act. So you're with these people the whole movie. And so it's so shocking when literally everyone but Betty Gilpin and I forget the older gentleman who comes up late. Oh, no. And then Gary, Ethan Suplee's character. So you go from 12 to like 9 to 3. Yeah, you go from 12 to 3 within like 10 minutes. And poor Justin Hartley, right? Yeah. Kevin on This Is Us, Justin Hartley in real life. When he's running to save the girl and she ends up in the pit with and she's like, it's my birthday tomorrow. I was going to eat cake. It's so ridiculous.
One of my
And he
favorite things about
blows
that
up again.
One of my favorite things about that scene, that if you guys ever rewatch it, you know, the woman who runs away, she's got a shirt on that says "Dead Sexy" on the shirt. It says "Dead
Oh yeah,
Sexy."
that's right.
And then when she gets blown up, the sexy part gets ripped off, so it just says "Dead."
That's amazing.
And we worked so hard on that joke, and no one's noticed that joke, but we worked really hard. Like, we thought of so many there were so many goddamn pitches for that. Like, what should the words be? Where it says like one thing and then another thing and then the other thing gets cut off. Like, that's where we ended up dead sexy.
I really wish I noticed that. I really was impressed by just how like Betty Gilpin's character goes in and how she figures out that these two people behind the counter aren't exactly who they say they are. Or
that line is incredible. The cigarettes cost $6 in Alabama. You fucked up, bitch. Just her delivery is incredible.
I'm really curious. Like with Betty Gilpin, like she has this such a incredible performance. And it reminded me of like The Bride and Kill Bill, while also being it's like own kind of unique thing.
Yeah, hopefully it's the same thing too. Yeah.
Were there any kind of, when directing or on set, what were the conversations like when she has that attitude of, hey, this is an out of body experience for her. This is the most exciting part of her life yet. Like, what were the conversations you had on set?
We talked about it a lot. I mean, like, kind of when we started, it was clear the script was written where it was like an action movie. You know what I mean? Like, we're like, she'd be like, say the thing. You know, like that was like the tone of the like movie, like in the like screenplay, and like that certainly worked. It was funny, even if it is like, you fucked up, bitch. You know, like that's funny. So we were kind of understood that was important, and then, but after about 3 or 4 days of like making the movie, like we were like, oh, there's probably more to be mined here, you know. And I mean, Betty and I had been talking just because you have to in order to like figure out how to like chart the path of a movie. Like we had been like talking about it a bunch, and had been talking about like what her backstory was, and like what that she probably had PTSD from, you know, like military service and stuff. And somehow or another, like by day 2 or so, there was a time in which she did kind of the like thing that you would want her to do really well, and she did it really well. And I was like, before we move on, can we just do it again? And maybe you do it weird? And she was like, yes, I can do that. And she was like super excited to do it weird, and like she, you know, and then it became a thing. There was like a conversation. She's told this story, so I feel comfortable telling this story. I would normally like talk out of school, but like there was definitely like at a certain point we would, with any new camera setup, we would be like, okay, and we do, you know, action, take 1, and she'd do something, and then I'd be like, okay, cool, now do the hardcore, you know, do the hardcore action movie version of that, and she would do that. I would usually say the Linda Hamilton. Like, do the Linda Hamilton.
Nice.
And she would do the Linda Hamilton. And then I would be like, do the baby dinosaur, which was like what it became a thing from like some inside joke like that, where it was just like, act like a weirdo and act like you're kind of crazy. And she would do the baby dinosaur version of it, and those all ended up in the movie more often than not. That version of things, because Betty's really smart and amazing, and sort of understands how to like both infuse the like pain that would be involved in being a person that had like gone through like killing people in Afghanistan, but also how funny it would be to like be that person in this scenario. Like it's like that's a hard needle to like thread, but like she understands. understood what that was. And
I felt like you in the one moment that really she's such a badass in this movie, and everything you're saying makes so much sense why I rooted for her from the beginning, because she infuses, because the best comedy comes from pain, and she infuses these crazy moments with pain. Like that moment between her and the guy who was the guy who was the National Guardsman, who was their consultant.
Sergeant Dale.
Just Sergeant Dale, when she's sitting there and she's like, I got all this and I thought that maybe this, and I work at a car rental place, and maybe this is a place where I can and it's just like that if you do that as like a lesser actor, that would just be a weird moment. But for her, I was so drawn into that, being like, she's been through some shit. And so I love the fact that you give us enough taste of what she's been through without hammering it over the head. Because for me as an audience member, I was like, this is clearly, and correct me if I'm wrong, but my idea, and I probably tweeted this at you because I've been nonstop talking about this movie since I saw it.
I mean, thank you.
My idea what I walked away from was that both extremes of the political spectrum are absurd. Both sides have absurdity when you're extreme. And Betty Gilpin's character is somebody who actually served this country, who actually fought for this country, who actually lost friends because of this. And now she's seeing these idiots fight over the stupidest shit, and it's kind of pushes her over the edge. And that's why she's like the middle ground who actually has a stake and understands what it means to be somebody who actually fought for this country,
That's a lot of what I felt like we should be saying, for sure. For sure. I would say it's an interesting thing you bring up that scene with Sergeant Dale.
So good.
The military consultant that to just tell a story that I don't know if it's out kind of that tone. And like a couple of days before we shot the scene, I was like, hey, Betty, like, because it was late in the movie, like that we were making that. And I was like, now that I know what we're making,
yeah.
I'm like slightly concerned about the scene. Like, I don't know that like we're like fully like getting everything we need to be getting out of the scene, because I was like, wait, like this is opportunity that is this feels like it will end up landing at a time period where you want to know what that character's deal is, and so I remember, we were both like, all of us were in a like hotel for a few days, because like where we were shooting, to get way too in the weeds as far as like the production of the movie, like we were mostly shooting in New Orleans, but we were shooting the stuff that happened in that field with the box and the pig coming out of the box and like pulling out the weapons and stuff. All that stuff was really north of New Orleans, where the like hills are bigger. It was like we had to go far away to get hills. So we were in hotels for that period. And because we needed a rain cover for all of that stuff, the hunter's blind acted as a rain cover. So like everything that happened in that like hunter's, like in the like bunker scenario, was like shot right after we shot the stuff in the field. So we were out of our normal element, and we were in these like weird random like Best Western hotels, in the middle of nowhere in Louisiana. And like I remember calling Betty and being like, we need to talk about this like new scene. Like it's like we need to really think about this and how to do this right. And like we got together before it shot and talked about it, and like really kind of like we're like, well, there's a way to tell the story. There's clearly the John Wick version, which was like, where is she? Where is she? What's your deal? And then there's the like non-John Wick version, which is her sitting down next to the guy and be like, what's going on? And we're like, how do we tell?
Poking the hole, going, sorry.
Yeah, she's like pressing it. Sorry.
Sorry.
With John Wick, I was gonna say, you have one of the best hand-to-hand combat scenes I've seen in a while in this movie in the final act with Hilary Swank. And I'm just curious how much. What were some of the inspirations behind that? Were there any other films?
John Wick definitely was.
Yeah,
I
John
would
Wick,
say it's that particular scene. I mean, to finish the story about the thing with the guy, it was like we were like, oh, this is an opportunity to tell a story about her that isn't the way the script kind of like portrays her, and it's just like it was a little bit me and Betty kind of going off script and kind of off in the wilderness, and like her going like mostly people think of that I'm like. But I work at a car rental company, and you like kind of can't be like that. So like with this, there's an opportunity to be like all of that was like improv, like on the day.
God, she's my hero. I am such a fan of her. She's incredible.
Yeah,
that's so awesome.
It was like totally the spirit of like what the story needed. You know what I mean? Which she like.
I'm wondering because I just wanted to follow up on something that you said, because you said shooting that scene now that you had figured out what movie you were shooting. When do you feel like you got a grasp of what movie you were shooting?
A little bit into it. I have to admit, like it took a second, like the tone was like silly. Like we knew that like it should be kind of fun and light, but like that makes it more complicated in a way, if that makes any sense.
Yeah.
It's been a big thing where like I stupidly read a couple of people's reviews of the movie on the first day that the reviews came out, and I stopped reading after that. But like I stupidly read like a couple of them, and it was painful because the movie was one thing, and then like they get shut down by the president of the United States because it was like a inciting violence and inflaming chaos.
Yeah.
And so after it was inflaming chaos, like we couldn't like do the same thing to re-release the movie. And so like in order to kind of inoculate ourselves from any sort of bad critique from that, like we had to like, and like this wasn't really my choice. It was really like more kind of like a big giant group decision, but it was like, I don't know if I could have thought of a better version, was that they were like, well, let's just tell people what we think the movie is, and that was like, oh, it's a social satire, and we kind of leaned into that as like a marketing campaign. But by doing that, we made all the people that would review, or sort of like the critics, like movie critics, be like, they were like, that's no fucking like not as smart as it thinks it is.
Yeah.
No, it's just like, no, it's not supposed to be smart. Totally not the point. Not the point. Not trying to be smart. Not trying to be smart. But like that was like the just like, oh, they think they're fucking Dr. Strangelove? That's no fucking Dr. Strangelove.
Yeah, that should be Craig, when this comes out on Blu-ray, please on the back have it say, it's no fucking Dr. Strangelove. It's not Dr. Strangelove.
It must be a strange experience. A strange experience trying to convince everyone that it's not smart.
I know! That's the craziest job of the whole thing. Like, the craziest part of the whole thing is it's like, we swung one way. No, so that's people like you guys find it, and like people.
Well, were you a little apprehensive about that at first, because this is obviously a really unique time. Like, it's a home premiere, and it came out the same week with Invisible Man and Emma.
Yeah.
Do you think more people are seeing it, or what are your thoughts on that? Obviously, there wasn't really much of a choice.
I think that in general, just straight up in general, more people are seeing it. Like, I think in general, like. There's tracking that like all the like studios do for like movies, and like we were like tracking like this, and then it was like COVID-19. It was like, wow.
Oh, no.
It all went away, right? Like, so it's like, oh, it's gonna make like this much money. Oh no, it's not gonna make any money. Like that's sort of what was happening on the kind of. I think that more. I don't know. they won't tell me how many people have seen it on the home video. Why would they? I think that more people are seeing it because it just got immediately released on home video after all of this than likewise, than otherwise. And I I would like to think, I would hope that maybe like some counteraction between the like right wing Breitbart media being like, this is trying to tell like liberals to kill conservatives, like, is gone, and also the like, this is supposed to be the most smart movie that explains why partisanship in America is like everything, and like explains it all away, and like, boy, did they fucking whiff on that. Like, hopefully those people are gone too, and like the people in the middle that are just like, I wanted to have fun and drink a beer.
Yeah, I do.
It's really who I was making it for, genuinely.
Now that we talked about the fun thing, I do want to ask a question about the Jackrabbit story, because my takeaway from it, and it's okay if you creatively don't want to answer this, but when I first watched it, I was like, I wonder what that means. And then watching it a second time, because the whole Jackrabbit story, it's the rabbit versus the tortoise, and her mom tells her that the rabbit that's slow and steady wins the race if you're the tortoise, and the rabbit falls asleep and the tortoise wins, and then the rabbit comes in and kills the whole family of the tortoise. And for me, that was a metaphor for the most evil version of capitalism. Like if that her mom told her from an early age that you are the tortoise, and no matter what you do, no matter how much you think you've won, the people up top, the jackrabbits, the people, the 1%, are always going to, even if they sleep for a little bit and let you get ahead, they're going to crush you. And then I thought when she sees the rabbit at the end, that was her becoming the jackrabbit in that moment. That was her like being like, I have
grilled cheese after that.
Yeah, and she goes to the grilled cheese, right? She gets to eat the grilled cheese, the jackrabbit's grilled cheese. So she eats all the meal of the jackrabbit. So she becomes the jackrabbit.
In the speech, she says like,
and he ate all the dinner.
Killed the wife and kids just to watch them die.
Which is everybody in the bunker, right? Huh? Huh?
and then she kills the jackrabbit and eats their dinner every last bite, and like the reason is because the jackrabbit always wins, and so there's definitely a callback for sure.
Did you ever consider having the jackrabbit at the end, having that jackrabbit kill Betty Gilpin?
Weirdly, we thought about a lot of weird shit.
Was there ever a discussion to let Betty Gilpin, Snowball is what you call her in that, was there ever a discussion to let them both die, or was that always the original ending, to have Hilary Swank die and Athena die, and then Betty Gilpin lives?
The goal was never that Snowball would die. I don't think that the metaphor really works if Snowball died. So that was never the goal. But the goal was certainly to make it feel like Snowball was about to die.
Yeah. Because
right? You're supposed to be oh, they're both gonna die. Oh wait, it's like the fucking story that she told.
Yeah. Because you stab her once in the gut, then she gets the blender chunk thing in her stomach, then she also gets the thermometer in her shoulder. So she took a beating.
She did. Yeah, I'm really proud of I really grossed out a lot of the crew because the Cuisinart blade was my idea. And then I was always I'm terrified of those. I was doing dishes at a group Thanksgiving at some point, and got cut by one, and was those things they're the worst.
You've been scarred for life by Cuisinart blades.
I actually,
those are dangerous. They're dangerous.
I've had a very similar experience to that with our magic bullet, because you can't detach it so you gotta get in there and clean. And it spins. There's nothing stopping it from spinning when you've got the sponge in there. So I'm with you.
Yeah,
I'm scarred.
So we could say that The Hunt is also a cautionary tale for dangerous kitchen appliances that we don't.
It's just about like how to be like careful in modern kitchen, like cooking and
Yeah.
how to like have best practices, you know.
How long did that fight scene take to shoot? Because it's 7 minutes long, and I watched it 3 times in a row the second viewing because they just start. I mean, they use everything in the kitchen to attack and kill and maim and beat the shit out of each other. It's incredible. And I love the fact that you shot it. A big pet peeve of mine with action movies is when it's so choppy I can't see shit, and you let the shots breathe to where I could always track what was going on. And the part that had me and my wife freaking out was when Betty Gilpin gets her arm caught in the shotgun as it's like, and she's like, ah!
I'll tell you a funny story about that. So like the story about that is like, there was like a bunch of beats. Like there was like, we needed certain things to happen. Like I wanted certain things to happen. I was like, people have to get kicked through a fireplace. People have to jump on. My friend Maeve does this macrame art that I think is very beautiful and and then like kick through the fireplace was the thing, and then fall from swinging on the macrame art was a thing, and like we knew all these things needed to happen, but like in order for that macrame thing to happen, people need to get up to a second level. Like what will motivate them to go to the second floor? And Heidi Moneymaker, her name is truly Heidi Moneymaker. That is
the greatest name ever.
Yes. She's was the fight choreographer and one of the 2 stunt choreographers of the whole show. And she was like, what if like, what if at this point there's a gun involved and like all of a sudden Athena has a gun and is like shooting it at her, and I was like, I don't really want. At first, I was like, I don't want guns. No guns. Like it needs to just be a fight. Like no guns. And she's like, well, how else do we get people upstairs? How do we chase people upstairs? And I was like, okay, fair enough. I can't think of a better version. So it's like, but if we're gonna do guns, let's do it as a shotgun, a double barrel shotgun. And then I was like, because I've always felt like there's like shotguns that like have to be. Ever since like my cousin took me out to like try to hunt when I was like 12 years old, I've been terrified of like just getting my finger caught in those shotguns. And I was like, what if like they just use that? Like, what if that's a fight inside of the fight?
So we're learning that a lot of the big moments come from your own trauma with different appliances and.
That's so funny that your biggest fear of guns is getting a finger or skin caught in.
I acknowledge the irony. I still promise you that is the truth. Yeah, I was scared. Like that. That's scary. Like that's.
Yeah, I can see it. As soon as it happened, I was like, "That's gonna blood blister. If it doesn't break the skin, it's gonna be a nasty blood blister."
We're running out of time. We probably need time for like one question each, maybe around the horn.
My god! Oh god! Okay.
I have a question. Yes, I have a question that I already have locked and loaded here. When a sort of bumbling Southern character is written, does Ethan Suplee just show up, or do you still have to call him?
Yeah, no, he auditions naturally. Like they just like he just shows up on the audition sheets, and then it's up to you to decide whether or not to put him in.
And it's always a yes. It's always a yes for him. Yeah.
He's great. I actually I met Ethan Suplee years ago when I used to work at a Starbucks, and he was the nicest guy ever. And then
he really is. He's awesome. Yeah, he's such a character that we made.
Right. Oh god, I have so many questions, but okay, I do want to ask, what was the discussions about killing off the majority of the characters in the first act? And I obviously I assume that was to subvert expectations for people, and then to kill off all of the elites in one fell swoop. Was that like from the beginning your idea to make people think they were seeing one kind of action movie, and then just boom, it all happens at once to shock people? Or what was the motivations?
My whole thing was like, I was like, this thing should be 89 minutes long. Like, I think it's 92 minutes long, but I was like, it needs to be 89 minutes long. We need to be done with this. Like, we need to go fast. Everything just happens fast.
It's not smart. I want it done.
I was like, I like it. We have to go fast. So a lot of it had to do with that, where I was just like, we need to keep moving. Like, let's fucking like give people what they want and move on. But for sure, you know, I mean, I will credit Nick and Damon with like a lot of the first like kills, in the fact that was in the screenplay, that it was like you would turn the page and you'd be like, oh,
Yeah.
that character said too. Okay, you know, it's like, okay. So like those first few ones are like for sure like a design element of the movie. And then when we got to the like Hunter's Blind, they also wrote, oh, it just at that point it felt like it was like, we know what we want. We want more Betty Gilpin murdering people.
Well, and I think it's funnier that way because these douchebag elitists wouldn't be good at fighting. Right. Like, so it's funnier that she goes, because I think she says, "Hi, bitch," or something like that when she blasts the guy's head. Hey, bitch. Yeah. She blasts the guy's head open. And so I think that serves the point of the movie. And and I do.
It was really great that like Nick and Damon like had kind of very loosely written anything that was an action scene. So like, you know, stuff like the fact that like she takes the like cartridge out of the like AK-47 and he's like, you know, or he takes it out and he's like, haha, like as if like taking out the bullets out, and she's just like, yeah, but there's like still one in the, what are you like? Yeah. Like those kind of beats were like things that we made up on set, in order to kind of like keep there being comedy beats and like character beats in the story. But also definitely because we were also like, let's do this. Let's just like kill everybody.
This is the last thing I want to say is that the moment, I'm assuming this was a baby dinosaur moment when Betty Gilpin in the car goes and kicks the guy out.
I think that was the first baby dinosaur movie.
Yes! Okay, that's all I had to know. Now, Ryan, go. Your turn.
I just had like a one final. Again, thank you so much for joining us on this show.
Awesome.
Like we're so lucky to have you here. And again, we're such a big fan of both your movie work and your TV work. Like one thing we love to ask any guests we have is just like three movies that inspired you growing up. Like what were just three that have inspired you, maybe impacted your work throughout the entire sense of your career?
No pressure.
Throughout my entire career. How about for this movie? For this movie, I would peg. I would say Evil Dead 2, not Evil Dead 1, but Evil Dead 2. I would say RoboCop. And what would I say is the third one? I don't know, something like Pretty and Beautiful. I'm trying to think.
Big Daddy.
Big Daddy, right?
Big Daddy.
And Big.
Yeah.
And Big.
That checks out.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
You know, you had me with Evil Dead 2 and RoboCop, but then you really won me over with Big Daddy.
That's the hook. That's the hook. Yeah.
This is not Dr. Strangelove, but it might be like Big Daddy. That's a good way to sell it for the home video release on Blu-ray. Well, Craig, we do have to let you go because AfterBuzz, I know we're all quarantined, but they're actually doing a ton of stuff here, Ryan, in the studio. So, come by any time. And where can they find you online? Those that haven't found you on Twitter yet.
Yeah, thanks. I mean, I guess I'm on Twitter and Instagram and all those things. It's Craig Zobel, and look forward to. I'm in the process of shooting a thing, except for that we got COVIDed. But I'm in the process of shooting a TV show, a miniseries for HBO called Mayor of Easttown,
Awesome.
which is about Kate Winslet as basically as a police detective in a small rural community outside of Philadelphia. And it's a murder mystery show, and it's a totally different vibe than what this is. It's very much more naturalistic and real kind of than this. And it's been a fun, different thing to do after this, and I'm really, really proud of it already. We're not done, but
Yeah.
I'm really, really proud of it, and so that's going to be the next thing that comes out, and hopefully everybody will check it out.
Awesome.
So I can't wait for it to get resume production. I'm sorry it's
Yeah.
halted for now, but we cannot wait. Anything you make, and even anything HBO, we're excited for. But,
Definitely.
Again, thank you
Thanks,
so
man.
much for coming on. You guys can find me at Ryan Nilsson on Twitter. Ben, how about you?
At the Ben Begley on Twitter and Instagram. And Jesse, where can they find you?
Twitter and Instagram at Too Much Jesse, for sketch at The Prom Losers.
Yeah. Craig, thank you so much, man. I'll probably still tweet every once in a while just stuff that I loved about the movie, but I'll try and not bother you too much.
Thanks so much.
Thank you for coming on.
Thanks for joining us from the East Coast.
Appreciate it.
Yeah.
All right, y'all.
Right.
Hit that thumbs up button. Give us a rating on iTunes. We'll shout you
Yes.
out on air. Thank you so much again for watching Guilty Movie Pleasures. And Ben, what
Yes.
do we always ask?
Hey, what is your guilty movie pleasure?
From producers Maria Menounos, Kevin Undergaro, and the entire Popcorn Talk Network, we would like to thank you for tuning in. For questions or comments, be sure to visit popcorntalk.com. I'm Sir Richard Wentworth, and this has been a presentation of the Popcorn Talk Network.